The distance is wrong. The wind moves from left to right, steady and clean, carrying scent away from the body, pressed low against the ground. The grass ahead is thin, broken by stone and shadow. Beyond it, the prey stands still, unaware, exposed close enough that the muscles along the leopard's shoulders tense without command. This is the moment where movement usually begins. The moment where instinct finishes what hunger started. But nothing happens. Breath slows, not from calm, but from restraint. The body remains compressed, weight balanced perfectly between forelimbs and hind legs, claws still sheathed. Every condition aligns the angle to cover the silence. The prey shifts slightly, head turning, but not far enough to detect danger. The gap between them could be closed in seconds. It should already be over. The leopard does not advance. Instead, the stillness stretches. Muscles stay locked, holding tension that grows heavier with each passing heartbeat. The grass barely moves. Insects resume their quiet rhythm. The world continues as if nothing significant is unfolding. But inside this narrow space between action and hesitation, something is breaking from pattern. A step forward would follow the rules. A step forward would end the need to choose. The leopard lowers its head slightly, not in preparation, but in pause. Its breathing becomes measured, deliberate. This is not exhaustion. This is not distraction. The body is ready. The moment is intact. Yet the final signal, the release, never comes. Seconds pass, then more. The prey shifts again, ears flicking. The opening narrows not suddenly, but enough to matter. A subtle change in posture alters the angle. The wind remains favorable, but the alignment is no longer perfect. The balance that made the moment inevitable begins to tilt toward uncertainty. Still, the leopard does not move. This is where instinct usually overrides calculation. Hunger does not wait. Opportunity does not return. In the wild, delay is loss. And yet here, delay becomes the only action taken. The tension does not resolve into motion. It drains instead slowly, like pressure released without sound. The leopard eases backward by centimeters, careful not to disturb the grass. The body turns away from the prey, not abruptly, not in retreat, but in controlled withdrawal. Within moments, the space where it waited is empty again. The prey remains alive, unaware it was ever close to disappearing. No chase follows. No mistake forces the outcome. The opportunity simply dissolves unclaimed. The landscape returns to its previous shape, unchanged and indifferent. From the outside, nothing unusual has occurred, but something essential has been interrupted. Predators do not often ignore certainty. They do not abandon advantage without cause. Survival depends on decisiveness, especially when conditions favor action. To hesitate here, to step away from a near-perfect moment, carries consequence. This was not a failure of ability. It was a refusal to act. And in environments where one missed chance can reshape everything that follows. The question is not why the prey survived. The question is why the leopard did not take what was already within reach. The leopard is not introduced by name at first, but by what makes it unmistakably singular. A faint asymmetry in its movement reveals itself when it shifts position, a slight delay in the left hind leg that disappears when the body is still. Along the shoulder where fur should lie smooth, a narrow line interrupts the pattern, an old scar pale and thin, cutting across muscle that once healed under pressure. These are not markers of weakness. They are identifiers. Proof that this is not any leopard, but one that has endured something specific, something that did not end cleanly. This individual does not occupy the center of a territory. It moves along the edges, appearing where cover meets open ground. Where forest thins into rock and grass, its paths repeat but never precisely. Certain places are avoided, others are revisited with caution. Over time, a pattern emerges not of dominance but of calculation shaped by memory. This story follows only this animal, not the species, not the rules they usually follow, only the consequences faced by this one body moving through one landscape. The moment just witnessed was not isolated. It was not a fluke caused by distraction or chance. It belongs to a larger question, one that will surface again and again as the pressure of survival increases. Why does this leopard hesitate when instinct demands action? In the wild, hesitation is costly. Predators survive by acting faster than prey can react. Every successful hunt reinforces behavior that works. Every failure removes options. Yet here the decision was not delayed by uncertainty in the environment. The wind was right. The distance was manageable. The prey was vulnerable. The moment was complete. And still the choice was refusal. This is the central question that defines what follows. Not whether the leopard can hunt, not whether it is capable, but why, when conditions align, it sometimes chooses not to. The answer, if one exists, will not arrive as a revelation. It will be tested through consequence. Each missed opportunity tightens the margin for error. Hunger does not pause for reflection. Territory does not wait for clarity. The environment continues to impose its demands regardless of internal conflict. What makes this question more dangerous is its timing. This leopard is not young. It is not experimenting. The signs etched into its body suggest experience earned through loss and recovery. At this stage, choices carry accumulated weight. A single misstep can reopen old wounds physically or otherwise. The landscape it moves through offers little forgiveness. Resources are uneven. Competitors patrol nearby. Human presence presses inward from the margins, shrinking safe corridors and compressing movement into fewer viable paths. Every decision now occurs under observation, whether visible or not. There will be other chances to hunt, but there may not be many. As the story continues, this question will be challenged repeatedly. Moments will arise where action is easier than restraint, where waiting creates risk greater than engagement. Each time the same tension will surface: act now and accept the cost, or hesitate and face what follows. By the end, there may still be no definitive explanation. Survival does not always offer clarity. But what will become visible is the price of hesitation and how it reshapes a life lived at the edge of certainty. This is not a story about what leopards usually do. It is about what happens when one of them does not. The first time it learned the cost of delay, it was not hesitation that failed it. It was certainty. The memory does not return as a sequence, but as pressure. The weight of a body moving too soon. The sound of hooves breaking into flight before contact was made. A chase that should never have happened unfolding across uneven ground. At full speed, the terrain offered no forgiveness. One misplaced step was enough. The impact was not dramatic. There was no prolonged struggle, no violent end. The prey escaped. The leopard did not. Pain arrived late, blooming through the hind leg after the momentum had already collapsed. For days afterward, movement was reduced to necessity. Each step carried a reminder that speed, when mistimed, could take more than it gave. That injury healed, but not cleanly. It left behind an imbalance subtle enough to ignore, but persistent enough to alter decisions. The body adapted. The mind adjusted with it. Movements became more deliberate. Risks were calculated more carefully. Survival continued, but something essential shifted. The second memory is quieter. A carcass lifted into a tree after a rare, successful hunt. The leopard had moved quickly, decisively, as instinct dictated. The kill was clean, the elevation perfect. For a moment, the outcome felt restored, proof that nothing fundamental had been lost. But the relief did not last. The scent carried farther than expected. By the time feeding began, the night was already crowded. Sounds moved through the darkness, footfalls that did not belong to prey. Shapes that remained just beyond sight. The leopard held its position tense, guarding the kill instead of withdrawing. It was a mistake born of confidence. The confrontation was brief, but costly. The carcass was abandoned. Not stolen outright, but made unusable. The leopard escaped without further injury, but the lesson was unmistakable. Acting decisively did not guarantee security. Success could still be undone. From that night on, elevation no longer meant safety by itself. Speed no longer meant advantage. Each behavior that once delivered certainty now carried an asterisk, an unspoken condition that demanded caution. The third fragment surfaces without warning. It is not a hunt, but a boundary. The leopard moves along the edge of a familiar range when the scent appears fresh, dominant, unmistakable. Another predator has crossed through marking space that was once uncontested. The leopard does not challenge it. There is no confrontation. The body slows, the route shifts. Territory shrinks without resistance. This retreat is not weakness. It is calculation informed by experience. A fight here would risk injury. Injury would mean starvation. Starvation would end everything. The choice to yield preserves survival in the short term, but it also redraws the map. What was once accessible becomes conditional. What was once safe becomes exposed. Over time, these moments accumulate. None of them alone explain the hesitation. Together, they begin to outline it. The leopard does not lack hunger. It does not lack skill. What it lacks is certainty that action will end cleanly. Each prior decision, whether to chase, to hold ground, to feed, has taught the same lesson from different angles. Outcomes are no longer predictable. In response, restraint becomes a tool. Hesitation is not confusion. It is an attempt to avoid repeating patterns that once carried cost. When the body locks in place instead of advancing, it is not defying instinct. It is applying it differently, filtering action through memory rather than impulse. But memory is a poor substitute for immediacy. The wild does not pause to account for past injury or lost advantage. Prey remains available only briefly. Competitors do not wait for hesitation to resolve. The environment rewards timing, not reflection. In this tension between learned caution and present demand, the leopard exists in a narrowing corridor. Each choice now must account for more variables than before. Distance is weighed against escape routes. Wind direction is evaluated twice. The presence of unseen observers, human or animal, is assumed even when not detected. Opportunity is no longer seized. It is audited. This shift keeps the leopard alive. It also keeps it from acting. What once would have triggered immediate movement now triggers assessment. What once ended in decisive engagement now dissolves into withdrawal. The body remains capable, but the threshold for release has risen beyond what the environment consistently provides. The result is a pattern that appears anomalous from the outside. Missed chances, unused advantages, moments where survival seems to be postponed rather than pursued. But from within the logic shaped by experience, these choices feel necessary. The problem is not that the leopard has learned too little. It is that it has learned too much. Experience has taught it what can go wrong, but not how to guarantee that it will not. Each lesson removes a layer of confidence without replacing it with certainty. Over time, restraint becomes the default, not because it is optimal, but because it is safer than repeating mistakes whose costs were once nearly fatal. This is the context that shadows every decision now. Not fear but memory. Not weakness but accumulation. A body that has survived long enough to remember the price of acting without reservation. Yet the environment has no memory of these lessons. It responds only to what happens next. As hunger grows and space contracts, the margin for hesitation continues to shrink. The strategies that once preserved life may soon threaten it. And when the next opportunity appears clear, close and fleeting, the leopard will again face the same dilemma. Act and risk repeating the past, or hesitate and accept what hesitation brings. The environment does not adapt to memory. It imposes rules that exist independent of experience, injury, or caution. For the leopard's survival is governed not by what has happened before, but by what the land allows at any given moment. And here, the rules are precise. The terrain is fractured. Open ground offers speed, but no concealment. Dense cover provides protection, but limits escape. Narrow corridors between rock and brush become funnels where movement is constrained and mistakes are amplified. Wind rarely stays constant. It slides along slopes, curls around stone, and reverses direction without warning. Scent does not travel in straight lines here. It pools, lingers, betrays. Time matters as much as space. Certain hours belong to prey. Others favor predators. Twilight compresses advantage into a narrow window where vision fails unevenly and sound becomes unreliable. Outside of it, the balance shifts quickly. Too early, and prey remains alert. Too late, and competitors emerge drawn by the same conditions. In this environment, there is no margin for hesitation without consequence. Hunger sharpens awareness, but also erodes patience. The longer food is delayed, the more risk accumulates elsewhere. Strength diminishes, recovery slows. The ability to absorb injury declines. A leopard operating below its physical threshold becomes vulnerable not just to prey escaping, but to displacement by rivals that sense weakness. Territory here is not defended through confrontation, it is held through presence. Routes must be walked, boundaries must be refreshed. Absence invites intrusion. The longer the leopard withdraws from certain paths, the more those paths become available to others. Space is not lost in a single moment, but through repeated avoidance. The land also carries human pressure. Paths cut through brush where none existed before. Scents unfamiliar to the wild settle into the ground. Sounds repeat at irregular intervals, never forming a pattern that can be fully anticipated. For a predator that relies on predictability to act, this intrusion adds another layer of uncertainty. Every movement risks exposure. Every delay risks starvation. The primary threat does not announce itself. It moves like a shadow, sometimes present, sometimes absent, but always possible. A rival predator, passing through leaves behind markers that linger longer than memory. The leopard detects them not visually, but through changes in behavior. Prey that moves earlier than expected silence. Where activity once occurred, subtle shifts that suggest another presence nearby. Engagement here is not a choice between action and inaction. It is a choice between imperfect options. To hunt openly invites detection. To wait invites depletion. To move territories invites conflict. To remain invites encroachment. There is no path that leads cleanly forward. This is the law of the environment. Every decision extracts payment. The leopard understands this. Its movements reflect constant negotiation with these constraints. It avoids open ground when the light is too stable. It delays entry into dense cover when escape routes feel limited. It tests the wind repeatedly, adjusting position by degrees rather than meters. Each choice is informed by risk, but risk does not disappear simply because it is acknowledged. The presence of competitors intensifies these pressures. Larger predators do not need to see the leopard to affect its behavior. Their scent alone alters the landscape of possibility. A single crossing can render an area unusable for days. The leopard responds by shifting routes, compressing its range further, increasing overlap between hunting and resting zones. This compression raises stakes. Mistakes become more costly because alternatives vanish. In this system, hesitation is not neutral. It is recorded indirectly through consequence. Missed hunts do not simply mean hunger. They mean reduced mobility. Reduced mobility means slower response. Slower response invites challenge. Each layer builds upon the last, tightening the conditions under which the leopard must operate. There is no room for error that does not echo. Yet the environment offers no guidance on how to resolve this tension. It does not reward caution consistently. Sometimes restraint avoids danger. Other times it ensures loss. The rules are not contradictory, but they are unforgiving. Success depends on timing that cannot be rehearsed and decisions that must be made without certainty. The leopard stands within this framework every time it lowers its body into cover. The wind may shift. A sound may travel farther than expected. A rival may already be closer than assumed. The land does not reveal these factors until after action is taken. This is the truth that governs survival here. Knowledge does not eliminate risk. It only clarifies what is at stake. As the pressure mounts, the leopard's choices grow heavier. Each delay is weighed against shrinking options. Each advance is weighed against consequences learned the hard way. The environment does not care which path is chosen. It responds only to the outcome. And in a place where every outcome has cost, the margin for survival narrows, not because the leopard is incapable, but because the rules allow no perfect response. The next opportunity will arrive under these same conditions. The land will offer no exceptions. The opportunity arrives without warning and without complication. The prey moves into view slowly, stepping from cover into open ground, as if the environment itself has cleared a path. Distance collapses to something manageable. The wind steadies. There is no competing scent nearby, no sound of movement beyond what belongs to this moment. Even the light favors concealment, breaking the leopard's outline against the terrain. This is not a rare alignment. It is the kind of situation predators depend on to survive. Everything about it suggests inevitability. The leopard lowers its body muscles, tightening along the spine. Hunger sharpens focus, narrowing attention to the space between itself and the prey. This is not desperation. This is readiness. The calculation runs quickly: angle, distance, escape routes. Each variable resolves cleanly. There is no visible flaw in the setup. This is the kind of chance that does not come twice. For a brief moment, the leopard advances just enough to shorten the gap, just enough to confirm that nothing has changed. The prey remains unaware. Its posture is relaxed, weight unevenly distributed, head turned away from danger. A sudden movement now would almost certainly succeed, and yet something interrupts the sequence. It is not fear, it is not pain, it is not distraction. The body stops. The leopard holds its position, suspended between motion and retreat. The muscles remain engaged, but the release does not come. Time stretches again, but this time the cost is immediate. The prey shifts slightly, not in alarm, but enough to alter the angle. The certainty that defined the moment begins to fray. Still, the leopard does not strike. Instead, it adjusts backward slowly, deliberately choosing concealment over commitment. The distance increases by small increments. The window narrows, then closes entirely. Within moments, the prey moves on unharmed and unaware, carrying the opportunity with it. The land returns to neutrality. The moment dissolves as if it never existed. This is not an isolated incident. It is the first clear deviation from what survival usually demands. A chance was presented cleanly and declined. Not because conditions were wrong, but because action itself carried weight. The consequences do not arrive all at once. They begin subtly. Hunger deepens, but not dramatically. Movement becomes more conservative. Routes once used freely are approached with greater caution. The leopard revisits the area later, but the prey does not return. Opportunities do not accumulate. They scatter. Two explanations begin to form, neither complete, neither sufficient on its own. The first is physical. The old injury, quiet but persistent, may have altered judgment. A leap mistimed could reopen damage that never fully healed. Pain is not always present to warn against risk. Sometimes it appears only after the cost is paid. From this perspective, hesitation is protection, an attempt to preserve a body that cannot afford another failure. The second explanation is psychological, though not emotional. Memory has changed the calculus. Past successes no longer guarantee safety. Past failures remain unresolved. Each hunt is evaluated not just on current conditions, but on what similar moments once led to. The body remembers what the environment does not. Neither explanation resolves the behavior entirely. Together they complicate it. What makes this anomaly dangerous is not the missed meal. It is the pattern it begins to establish. When survival depends on repetition, deviation compounds. One refusal creates another. Each delay recalibrates what feels acceptable. Over time, the threshold for action rises beyond what the environment reliably provides. The leopard senses this shift, though not consciously. Its movement becomes tighter, more inward. The range contracts. Resting sites overlap with hunting zones, reducing flexibility. Each choice now affects the next more directly than before. This is where the question intensifies. Is the leopard adapting, refining survival through restraint? Or is it avoiding risk at a cost it cannot sustain? The land offers no answer. It simply continues to present moments and withdraw them when they are not taken. Prey does not linger for reconsideration. Hunger does not negotiate. Competitors do not respect caution. By choosing not to act when action was possible, the leopard has altered its position within the system. The environment has not changed, but its relationship to it has. This is the first clear break from instinctive rhythm. The point where choice begins to outweigh impulse, where survival is no longer driven purely by opportunity, but by accumulated consequence. Whether this restraint will preserve life or accelerate loss remains unresolved. The outcome will not be decided by a single event, but by what follows, by how often hesitation replaces engagement, and how quickly the cost of waiting overtakes the cost of risk. For now, the leopard moves on carrying the weight of a decision that did not end in failure, but did not end in success either. And in a world where survival demands clarity, that ambiguity may be the most dangerous outcome of all. The consequences do not arrive as punishment. They arrive as erosion. At first, the change is almost invisible. The leopard moves more slowly between resting sites, conserving energy that was once replenished regularly. Pauses grow longer. Routes are chosen for safety rather than efficiency. None of this signals crisis. It signals adjustment. But adjustment has limits, and the land does not announce when those limits are near. Hunger becomes a constant background pressure. Not sharp enough to force reckless action, but persistent enough to dull reaction time. Muscles remain strong, yet recovery between exertions lengthens. Small efforts cost more than they used to. Each day without a successful hunt subtracts something subtle: speed, patience, resilience, none of it dramatic on its own. Territory responds first. Paths that once belonged exclusively to the leopard begin to feel uncertain. Familiar crossings carry foreign scent, faint but recent. The leopard slows near these markers, testing the air repeatedly, altering direction more often. Avoidance becomes routine. With each detour, the usable range contracts. The core of the territory tightens inward, reducing access to prey-rich zones that once balanced risk and reward. This loss is not seized. It is yielded. Other predators do not challenge directly. They do not need to. Presence alone reshapes boundaries. A route unused for several nights becomes an invitation. A feeding area avoided becomes available. The leopard senses this shift not as confrontation, but as narrowing options. Where movement once flowed outward, it now circles back. The body pays attention. Fat reserves thin. The coat loses some of its density, not enough to signal weakness outwardly, but enough to be felt internally. Nights feel longer. Cold settles in earlier. Rest does not restore as fully as before. These are not signs of failure yet, but they are signals that the margin for error is shrinking. One evening, the leopard tests that margin. A smaller prey animal appears briefly along a ridgeline. The conditions are imperfect, wind inconsistent, cover limited, but the distance is short. This is not an ideal hunt. It is an acceptable one. The leopard advances cautiously, measuring each step. The prey notices movement and freezes, unsure whether to flee. This moment demands decision. The leopard hesitates only briefly, but long enough for the prey to bolt. The escape is clean. No chase follows. The leopard stops, watching the space empty again. The cost here is not the missed meal. It is confirmation. Hesitation has become default. The realization does not register as thought. It manifests as tension, a tightening that does not release easily. The body remains alert, but action feels heavier as though every movement must justify itself. This is no longer selective caution. It is systemic delay. Over the following days, the pattern intensifies. Resting periods lengthen, but quality declines. Hunger disrupts sleep. The leopard wakes frequently, scanning, listening, reassessing. Energy spent on vigilance reduces what remains for movement. The balance between caution and necessity tips further out of alignment. Competitors sense the change. A rival's scent appears closer than before, overlapping paths that were once avoided. The leopard detects it and withdraws without testing. There is no confrontation, no posturing. The choice is immediate retreat. Another segment of territory is surrendered without resistance. This is the clearest loss yet. Yielding space increases travel distance between viable hunting areas, compounding energy expenditure. Each hunt now requires more movement, more exposure, more time. The very caution that preserved safety begins to create risk by stretching resources thin. The leopard adapts again, compressing activity into fewer zones. These areas grow crowded with prey that learns quickly and with signs of other predators doing the same. The environment becomes noisy with overlapping pressures. Silence, once an ally, becomes rare. One night the leopard is followed, not closely, not aggressively, but persistently. The scent remains behind it, never fading completely. The leopard adjusts course repeatedly, doubling back, pausing, listening. The presence does not resolve. It trails at a distance, waiting. The leopard does not confront. It cannot afford injury. It cannot afford escalation. Instead, it leads the presence away from what remains of its core area, sacrificing ground to preserve space that still feels usable. By morning, the follower is gone. The territory, however, is not restored. The cost of that night is exhaustion. Movement slows further. Reaction time dulls. The body demands food with increasing urgency. The calculus that once favored restraint begins to crack under necessity. The leopard becomes aware, not consciously, but physically, that avoidance cannot continue indefinitely. And yet, when the next opportunity arises, hesitation still intervenes. The prey appears at close range, but not perfectly. There is a faint scent nearby, not clearly identifiable. The wind is inconsistent. The terrain offers cover, but limits retreat. This is the kind of moment that once would have been seized despite imperfections. The leopard does not commit. The prey escapes, again. Now the cost is undeniable. Hunger sharpens into weakness. Muscles respond more slowly. A short run leaves the leopard winded. The body compensates by reducing movement even further, deepening the cycle. Each missed hunt accelerates decline. Each decline increases caution. Each increase in caution reduces opportunity. This is the price of repeated restraint. The environment has not changed its rules. It continues to offer moments that demand decision. What has changed is the leopard's capacity to absorb failure. The margin for error is gone. Where hesitation once preserved survival, it now threatens it. This realization does not produce urgency. It produces conflict. To act now means risking injury in a weakened state. To wait means continuing a pattern that leads toward collapse. Neither option offers safety. Both carry consequence. The choice is no longer between caution and aggression. It is between different kinds of loss. The leopard stands within this narrowing corridor, pressed from both sides by hunger and memory. The strategies that once protected it now undermine it. The lessons learned too well have become obstacles. This is the cost of the earlier choice, not immediate, not dramatic, but cumulative. Survival has become heavier with each decision deferred. The land no longer offers space to recalibrate. It demands resolution. And as night approaches again, the leopard moves with a body that remembers every mistake and an environment that offers no forgiveness for indecision. When the next turning point arrives, it will not wait. The shift announces itself quietly, almost imperceptibly. At first, it is only a change in scent, thin, unfamiliar layered beneath the usual signals of soil and vegetation. The leopard slows, lifting its head slightly, drawing the air deeper into its lungs. This smell does not belong to prey. It is not fresh enough to demand immediate retreat, but not old enough to ignore. It lingers in a way that suggests intent rather than passage. The leopard adjusts its route, angling away from the core area it still relies on. The scent follows. This is not pursuit in the traditional sense. There is no sound of movement behind it, no sudden pressure. The presence remains indirect, revealed only through absence, through places that feel watched, through silence where small animals should be active. The leopard stops twice, listening. Each time the land offers nothing definite. Then comes the mark. It is placed deliberately high enough to be noticed, recent enough to be undeniable. The leopard approaches cautiously, reading it in fragments: strength, confidence, familiarity. This is not a transient intruder passing through. This is a claim. And it overlaps ground the leopard still depends on. The realization reframes everything that has come before. The rival has not appeared because the leopard is weak. It has appeared because the leopard has been absent. Routes once walked regularly have gone unused. Boundaries left unrefreshed have softened. Space surrendered gradually has signaled opportunity. The leopard did not lose territory through defeat. It yielded it through restraint. This is the midpoint where the narrative breaks open. The hesitation that once seemed protective now reveals its other cost: invisibility. By avoiding conflict, by withdrawing repeatedly, the leopard has made itself easier to displace. Survival through caution has carried an unintended message that this space is negotiable. The scent deepens as the leopard moves. It intersects paths that were once avoided by others. Prey behavior changes as well. Animals that once lingered now move earlier, more erratically. The ecosystem has begun to reorganize around a new pressure, one the leopard did not anticipate because it never arrived directly. Then comes the second signal: human scent. It is faint but unmistakable, woven into the same corridor the rival has claimed. Footprints appear where there should be none, partially erased but recent. The leopard freezes, processing this convergence. Rival, predator, human presence, reduced territory, hunger. All of it compresses into a single realization: the margins are gone. This is not simply about a missed hunt anymore. It is about displacement. The leopard is no longer deciding when to act. It is deciding whether it still belongs here. The shock is not violent. It is informational. Everything that once framed hesitation as a choice now reveals itself as a series of signals interpreted by others. The rival does not know the leopard's history. It does not know about injury or memory. It responds only to what the land reflects: unused paths, unchallenged space opportunity. From this point forward, restraint will not be neutral. The leopard moves carefully along the edge of the claimed area, mapping what remains accessible. Each step confirms the same truth. The overlap is significant. The rival is not testing, it is settling. And where the rival settles, conflict becomes inevitable, or avoidance becomes permanent. Avoidance would mean retreating farther than before into less stable ground, areas closer to human activity. Prey that moves unpredictably, increased risk of encounter without the option to disengage quietly. The leopard understands this not as fear, but as arithmetic. Confrontation offers no certainty either. The body is not at full strength. Injury now would be catastrophic. A fight would not guarantee reclamation, only exposure. This is the pivot. The earlier question, why the leopard hesitates, evolves into something more dangerous. What happens when hesitation changes how others behave? The leopard circles once more, testing the air, reassessing. The rival's scent is steady. The human presence intermittent but recent. This convergence is not coincidence. It is the product of accumulated choices converging on the same shrinking space. From the outside, nothing dramatic has occurred. No fight, no chase, no visible loss. But internally, the map has been redrawn. The leopard is no longer reacting to isolated moments. It is reacting to a system that has begun to move against it. This realization forces a reevaluation of every future choice. Waiting now does not preserve safety. It accelerates displacement. Acting now does not guarantee survival. It invites risk in a weakened state. The balance that once allowed selective restraint has collapsed. There is no reset. The leopard withdraws from the overlapping zone, moving toward ground it has avoided until now. The scent of the rival fades slightly. Human markers increase. This direction is worse in some ways, but it is uncontested for the moment. As night falls, the pressure does not ease. It sharpens. The leopard has crossed an invisible threshold. The environment is no longer neutral. It is responding. The land has begun to choose sides not consciously, but through consequence. This is the midpoint shock, not because something has happened, but because something irreversible has begun. The earlier choices cannot be undone. The cost has arrived in a form that cannot be ignored. From here on, survival will require action that no longer fits the pattern of restraint. The long night ahead will not offer clarity or comfort, only endurance. And as darkness settles, the leopard moves into unfamiliar ground, carrying the knowledge that hesitation has already reshaped the world around it. Night stretches longer than it should. Cold settles early, pressing into the ground before the leopard has found a place that feels stable. The air carries unfamiliar sounds, distant, irregular, never repeating long enough to form pattern. Somewhere beyond the trees, metal shifts against stone. Farther still, a brief flash of light dissolves into darkness. None of it is close. All of it is near enough to matter. The leopard lowers itself into cover that is thinner than preferred. The ground here is harder, the vegetation sparse. Scents overlap without resolving cleanly, forcing constant reassessment. Rest should come now. Energy must be conserved. But the body does not settle easily. Muscles remain tense, coiled without purpose. Hunger sharpens perception instead of dulling it, making every sound feel closer than it is. The night does not offer opportunities. It offers endurance. Hours pass without movement. The leopard shifts position carefully, adjusting to relieve pressure in its limbs. Each small movement is measured, tested against sound and scent. The ground holds heat poorly here. Cold leaches upward, tightening joints that already carry fatigue. Sleep comes in fragments, brief, shallow, easily broken. At some point, thirst becomes noticeable. Not urgent yet, but present. The leopard considers moving toward a familiar water source, then rejects the idea. The route crosses open ground. Wind direction is uncertain. The risk of being seen or scented outweighs the need. For now, dehydration is preferable to exposure. The prey in this area behaves differently. Small animals move quickly, rarely lingering. Their paths are erratic, their pauses short. This is not abundance. It is caution responding to multiple pressures. Hunting here will require more effort for less reward. The leopard begins to calculate. Energy remaining versus energy required. Distance to safer ground versus risk along the way. Hunger now versus hunger later. None of the answers satisfy. Near midnight, movement registers at the edge of awareness. Not a sound, but a shift, a subtle change in how the night breathes. The leopard freezes, senses extending outward. The presence does not resolve into a shape or direction. It lingers just long enough to demand attention, then fades. This uncertainty is worse than confirmation. A known threat can be avoided or confronted. An unknown one forces constant vigilance. The leopard remains still for long minutes afterward, listening, testing the air repeatedly. Nothing follows. Nothing leaves. Eventually, the body must move. The leopard rises slowly, placing weight down in stages, checking for noise. Each step is cautious, not because the ground is dangerous, but because energy is finite. Movement now must justify itself. The leopard advances a short distance, then stops, scans, listens. The process repeats. This is not hunting. This is survival without momentum. As the night deepens, temperature drops further. The leopard seeks a position that offers slight elevation, enough to improve airflow and scent detection. The climb costs more than expected. Forelimbs strain. Breath comes heavier. At the top, the view offers little, just darkness layered over darkness. The position is not ideal, but it is marginally better than below. From here, the leopard waits. Time loses structure. Hunger intrudes as a steady ache rather than a spike. The body adapts by slowing further, conserving what remains. Thoughts, if they can be called that, do not form narratives. They register as impulses: move, stay, retreat, advance. Each impulse is evaluated and mostly dismissed. At some point, prey appears at a distance, not close enough to act on, but close enough to provoke attention. The leopard watches tracking movement through gaps in cover. The wind is wrong. The angle is poor. To reposition would require crossing exposed ground. The leopard remains still. The prey moves on. This pattern repeats. Possibility without access. Sight without approach. Each instance reinforces the same condition the night offers: no clean solution. As fatigue accumulates, perception begins to blur. Sounds overlap. Scents become harder to separate. The leopard counters this by stopping more often, resetting its senses. These pauses stretch longer, reducing movement further. The strategy preserves awareness, but costs time. Competitors move elsewhere in the darkness. Their presence is inferred, not observed. A distant call. A sudden silence among small animals. The leopard tracks these changes without pursuing them. Engagement would demand energy it cannot spare. At some point before dawn, thirst sharpens into need. The leopard reassesses. The water source remains risky, but dehydration now threatens function. Weakness would be worse. The decision forms, slowly weighed against every prior calculation. The leopard moves. The route is indirect, chosen to maximize cover, even at the cost of distance. Each step is deliberate. Muscles protest, but respond. The body still works. It is simply slower. The ground remains quiet beneath padded paws. The leopard pauses frequently, testing the air, listening for signs of presence. Halfway there, the wind shifts. Scent arrives abruptly, human recent mixed with something else. The leopard stops instantly, retreating a few steps without turning its body. The path forward is no longer viable. Water will have to wait. The withdrawal costs energy. Frustration does not surface as emotion, but as tightening and increase in internal pressure with no release. The leopard finds new cover and settles again, this time without expectation of rest. Dawn begins to thin the darkness. The long night has not resolved anything. It has only extracted payment. The body feels heavier. Movement slower. Hunger louder. Territory smaller. The world has not collapsed, but it has narrowed. Each option available now carries greater cost than it did hours ago. This is what restraint accumulates into when tested by time. Not safety, but compression. The leopard has survived the night, but survival has become more expensive. As the first light reaches the ground, the leopard lowers itself into concealment once more. Day brings visibility, and visibility brings danger. Hunting now would be reckless. Rest is required, even if it is incomplete. The long night ends without event, without victory, without clarity. But it leaves behind a condition that cannot be ignored. The leopard is still alive. Yet everything that sustains that life has grown harder to reach. When the next decision arrives, it will not do so in a controlled environment. It will come with pressure already applied, with the body already compromised, with the land offering fewer margins than before. The night has done its work, and as daylight settles in, the leopard remains hidden, carrying the weight of a survival strategy stretched to its breaking point, aware now that waiting any longer will demand a cost it may no longer be able to pay. The moment does not announce itself as a climax. It arrives quietly folded into the routine of necessity. The leopard has been resting for hours when the shift begins, not in sound, but in pressure. Hunger has moved beyond discomfort. It now interferes with judgment, slowing response, dulling the sharp edge that once made distance and timing instinctive. The body still functions, but it does so under strain. Muscles respond a fraction later than expected. Breathing deepens sooner. Every movement costs more than it should. Then the opportunity appears. The prey emerges along a narrow corridor where rock meets brush. It is not large. It is not ideal. But it is close. Closer than anything since the night before. The angle is imperfect, the wind unstable, but there is cover on both sides. Escape routes exist, but they are limited. This is not a moment that offers safety. It is a moment that demands decision. The leopard lowers itself slowly, testing weight against ground. The distance is short enough to close quickly, but only once. There will be no second approach. If this attempt fails, pursuit is unlikely to succeed. The body knows this. The environment confirms it. This is not a question of patience anymore. The choice is stark. To act now means committing with reduced strength, uncertain footing, and incomplete information. Injury is possible. Exposure is possible. Failure would accelerate everything already moving against the leopard. But to withdraw, to hesitate again, means something else entirely. It means accepting that the strategy of restraint has reached its limit. That waiting no longer preserves survival, but actively erodes it. The leopard advances, not suddenly, not recklessly, but with intent. Each step is controlled, compressing distance while preserving balance. The prey remains unaware, head lowered, attention elsewhere. The window is narrow, but still open. The leopard's muscles coil, preparing for release that has been withheld too many times before. Then the wind shifts, not dramatically, just enough to matter. Scent drifts forward, brushing the prey's awareness. The animal stiffens, senses sharpening. The moment teeters. This is where hesitation would normally return, where memory would intervene and pull the leopard back into concealment. It does not. The leopard commits. The burst of movement is not as fast as it once would have been, but it is decisive. The body launches forward, closing the gap in seconds. The prey reacts late, scrambling to flee through restricted space. The terrain works against it. The corridor that made this moment possible now limits escape. Contact is brief, not violent, not clean. The leopard secures the prey, but the effort costs more than expected. Muscles strain harder. Breath shortens. The body compensates instinctively, adjusting grip, redistributing weight. For a moment, balance wavers. This is the edge where injury could occur. It does not. The prey is subdued. The leopard does not pause to assess. There is no time. Exposure increases with every second spent on the ground. The body moves immediately to secure the result of its decision. The carcass is lifted with effort that borders on strain. The climb that follows is slower than it should be, but still controlled. Each movement is deliberate, each pause calculated to prevent a slip that would undo everything. When the leopard reaches a stable position, it stops. Breathing is heavy now. Not from panic, but from expenditure. The body trembles slightly as muscles release tension they have held too long. The risk has not ended, but it has shifted. The immediate threat has passed. What remains is consequence. This is not a victory. The leopard has survived the moment, but the cost is clear. Energy reserves are nearly depleted. Recovery will take time the environment may not allow. The body has been pushed beyond what restraint was meant to prevent. Acting late has required more than acting early would have. As feeding begins, the leopard remains alert. The senses scan constantly, testing air, listening for movement. The risk of interference remains high. Competitors are active. Human presence is never far. The leopard eats quickly, prioritizing intake over caution, knowing that delay here would be fatal in a different way. After a short time, the leopard withdraws. It does not finish the meal. It cannot afford to. Remaining longer would invite detection. The body carries what it can, away from the sight, choosing distance over completion. This, too, is a compromise, another imperfect choice layered onto the last. When the leopard finally settles into cover, exhaustion sets in fully. The body lowers itself with care, guarding joints, protecting limbs. The relief of having acted is muted by awareness of what it cost. This was the moment restraint failed to protect. But it was also the moment avoidance failed completely. The outcome does not resolve the central question. It complicates it. Acting did not restore certainty. It did not undo the losses accumulated through hesitation. It simply prevented immediate collapse. The leopard remains alive, but altered. The territory has not been reclaimed. The rival still exists. Human pressure has not eased. Hunger has been addressed, but only temporarily. The decision to act has bought time, not security. This is the nature of the choice that was made. Not between success and failure, but between different kinds of damage. The leopard rests now with a body that remembers both paths clearly. The path of hesitation, which narrowed the world slowly, and the path of action, which demanded a cost paid all at once. Neither offered escape from consequence. As daylight strengthens, the leopard moves deeper into concealment, carrying the remains of the night's decision with it. The environment has not rewarded bravery. It has not punished restraint outright. It has simply continued to apply pressure until movement became unavoidable. This was the climax, not because it solved anything, but because it removed the illusion of control. From here on, survival will not hinge on choosing correctly. It will hinge on enduring the results of choices already made. The aftermath does not arrive with clarity. It settles slowly, like weight redistributing across a body that has already carried too much. For hours after the hunt, the leopard remains still. Not sleeping, not fully alert, existing in a narrow state between recovery and vigilance. Muscles ache with a dull persistence. The body has taken in food, but not enough to restore what was spent. The relief of having acted is real, yet incomplete. Hunger has receded, but weakness has not. The ground around the resting place is unfamiliar. This is not a site chosen for comfort or safety, but for necessity. It lies farther from the shrinking core of territory, closer to spaces the leopard once avoided. Sounds carry differently here. Human activity is not constant, but it is present enough to shape movement. The leopard listens more than it rests. Nothing immediately follows. No rival appears. No further threat announces itself. And yet the sense of displacement remains. When the leopard eventually moves again, it does so cautiously, testing limbs that still respond, but with less confidence than before. The body works, but it remembers the strain. Every step reinforces the same truth. The cost of waiting was paid in attrition, and the cost of acting was paid all at once. Neither path preserved what once existed. As days pass, the consequences continue to unfold, without drama. The rival's scent still marks nearby routes. The overlap remains. The territory has not expanded again. The hunt did not reset the balance, it only delayed collapse. The leopard adapts by shifting farther outward, navigating ground that demands more awareness and offers less margin for error. This is survival now, not dominance, not recovery. The central question returns unchanged, but heavier. Why did this leopard hesitate when instinct demanded action? The answer does not resolve into a single explanation. It fragments instead. Memory played a role. Injury shaped caution. Experience altered thresholds. Each factor contributed, but none alone dictated the outcome. Hesitation was not a flaw. It was an adaptation formed under pressure. And like many adaptations, it worked until it didn't. What becomes clear is not whether hesitation was right or wrong. It is that hesitation reshaped the conditions under which later choices had to be made. By waiting, the leopard preserved itself in the short term, but surrendered space. By acting later, it survived the moment, but paid more than it could afford, comfortably. Survival, in this case, was never about making the correct choice. It was about absorbing the consequences of whichever choice remained. The leopard continues to move through the landscape, altered but alive. Its presence is lighter now, less assertive. The world it navigates has narrowed, but not closed. There are still moments, still chances, but fewer of them arrive cleanly. Each carries residue from what came before. From the outside, nothing marks this story as extraordinary. The leopard hunts. It moves. It avoids conflict when possible. It engages when necessary. To an observer, this is simply life in the wild. But beneath that surface lies a quieter truth. Survival is not a sequence of victories. It is a process of accumulation of memory, injury, avoidance, and action layered over time. Choices do not vanish once made. They alter the terrain of what comes next. In this light, the question shifts again. Is survival about acting at the right moment? Or about living long enough to face the consequences of acting too early or too late? The leopard offers no answer. It cannot. The environment does not require one. It responds only to presence, absence, and outcome. The story does not end with resolution, but with continuation. Somewhere beyond the edges of what remains of its territory, pressure will return. Another rival, another human trail, another imperfect opportunity. When it does, the leopard will respond with a body shaped by everything that came before. Whether it hesitates again or acts sooner will not erase the past. It will only add to it. And perhaps that is the final truth this story leaves behind. In the wild, survival is not about choosing correctly once. It is about carrying the weight of every choice and moving forward anyway. The leopard disappears into cover, not restored, not defeated, still alive, still adapting, still unresolved, and the question remains unanswered but intact. When every option carries a cost, is survival measured by the choice itself, or by the willingness to endure what follows?